Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. Got an awesome guest for you today, Richard Moschella. Great conversation. Really enjoyed chatting with him. First of all, a little housekeeping, as we do from time to time. We still have a few rooms left for Thomas House, March 17th or 18th. You get dinner, buffet-style, wonderful home-cooked dinner. The overnight ghost hunt, you get your own private room for the night with your own key, and you get breakfast the next morning for $125 a person. Tell me where else you can find that much entertainment for that cheap a person, and I'll buy a ticket for you. Anyway, we have that coming up. If y'all would like to join us, go to my Facebook page, and you'll see the links there for the Friday night tickets and the Saturday night tickets on the Unseen Paranormal Podcast Facebook page. Also, we have announced our Tennessee Haunts and Legends Expo 2023, which is going to be October 21st, 2023 at the Nashville Fairgrounds in Nashville, Tennessee. But play this little commercial, and then we'll get on with the show. Medics for Paranormal, PPF Investigations, and the Unseen Paranormal Podcast present the Tennessee Haunts and Legends Expo, coming October 21st, 2023, to the Fairgrounds, Nashville, in Nashville, Tennessee, featuring over 80 vendors, paranormal teams, and historic locations, as well as a full schedule of speakers with topics including Bigfoot, the Bell Witch, paranormal investigations, and more. A majority of the proceeds will benefit a local historic location and a local charity. For more information and how to be a vendor, please visit tnhauntsandlegendsexpo.com. Tickets on sale soon. Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strange of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman-Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unseen Paranormal. Today we welcome author, investigator, and medium Richard Moschella. Richard is the author of Case Files of the Paranormal, Spirit Voices, Investigations in Search of the Paranormal, Spirits in History, and his latest book, Spirit Seeker, Communion with Those on the Other Side of the Veil. He founded the New Jersey Paranormal Project in 2007 and is the lead investigator. Today, we're going to chat with Richard about how he got his start in the paranormal and his experiences as a medium and investigator. Richard Moschella's books are available on Amazon, Kindle, and wherever fine books are sold. For more information on Richard and the New Jersey Paranormal Project, please visit richardmoschella.com, and I'll include all the links for social media and all that good stuff in the show notes. Hey, Richard, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on, Eric. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I pay attention to Beyond the Fray Publishing because they just have such quality books and authors.
Well, it's a publisher. I mean, they really do have like the best of the best there, and
yeah,
I'm just honored to be in their mention. You know, when you go on their website and it lists all the authors' names, and just to be up there amongst these experts in the field of all aspects of the paranormal. It's just great company. Yeah,
and you have quite a few books with them now, and I've been meaning to have you on the show, and so now finally I get to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, like the books. I mean, they, it's just something. They just start like snowballing. Like once you start one, it's like the ideas just keep flowing. So at any given time, sometimes I have like 2 or 3 books just in the process of. From the conception to writing them, they're sitting on my desk. So right now at the moment, I'm working on 2. So it's just, you're in its own right.
Yeah. So how did you get into the paranormal to come around to write all these books and founding the New Jersey Paranormal Project? I always like to ask an origin story because I think everybody has their own unique story of how they got into the paranormal.
Exactly. Mine must be like a lot of kids who grew up in the 1980s and 90s. I always say we grew up at a time where when you wanted to know about the paranormal, you had to go to the library, the old, fashion style. You had to go
right.
to the darkened corner in the back where, maybe 20 or 30 paranormal books from the 60s and 70s were being held. And I remember reading books by the Holzer, family and by the Warrens, and reading books about Roswell. And then also, the History Channel actually showed, the documentaries. And A&E had documentaries, and In Search of, and all these fantastic shows that encapsulated all aspects of the paranormal. So just watching the documentaries and going to the library and checking out everything that they had. And then as I started getting older, and now you get into the X-Files, once that came on, that really sparked everybody, wanting to explore these paranormal topics that they were covering.
Right.
I remember one show was the Jersey Devil. And I remember begging my uncle when we were going down the Jersey Shore, you got to drive through, the Pine Barrens. I want to see it. And we did, and nothing happened.
Right.
It was just that spark from a young age. And then also with the mediumship, that also started at a young age for me. I started to pick up on spirit and found out that the mediumship did run on my father's side of the family. And talking to my grandmother about it and her experiences. So it was like I had an awakening from the knowledge that I was starting to read and intake from everything from the books to the documentaries on television, and then knowing that my family did have a connection with the spirit world through mediumship and seances that my father's side of the family would have. So it's kind of like from an early age, I was just immersed in the paranormal. So I guess this is all destined to happen, Eric.
Yeah, I kind of, for me, it was kind of similar. And I think me and you are around the same age. I just turned 40.
I'm 41, yeah.
So growing up watching, I was fascinated with the Twilight Zone and things like that as well, and watching those old reruns. But yeah, and with my family as well, the paranormal was just a normal thing because my mom was very much an empath, and it kind of runs on that side of my family. So I'm a really strong empath. But I think it's really cool to grow up in a family like that, because I've talked to so many people who were kind of taught out of it as a kid, and then they kind of rediscover that side of themselves as an adult.
And I always hung out at the adult table at parties. I wanted to hear what they were talking about. So the kids would be, and I would find my way to the adult table, and that's where they would be sharing stories about, when somebody's aunt had a seance, the curtains started moving, and I mean, I didn't sleep at all that night, but they were fun stories to hear. And it's just stuff like that just sparked, our interest. Once you heard these stories, you wanted to read more about it, and that really sparked my journey.
Yeah, and so you, in 2007, you started the New Jersey Paranormal Project.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Because I know for me, we grew up at the same time, and you kind of have to find your own way before the paranormal TV shows and things, and try to figure out your own stuff.
Well, it was probably around the launch of a little unknown show that not too many people know called Ghost Hunters, TAPS, right? So that's probably like 2005, 2006 when that exploded, right, on the Sci-Fi Channel. And I remember seeing that show and seeing that they would go into these historical places and they would start to investigate. And I wanted to try that. I'm like, you know what? I was driving through the countryside once, and this old Victorian home just called out to me. I'm like, I'm going to walk on the grounds. So I started walking on the grounds, and I started videotaping, the EVP session that I was having. I was taking pictures with my digital camera at the time, and I actually captured some small evidence. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start a YouTube channel, call it the New Jersey Paranormal Project, and just try to go to these historical places throughout the state and just show what I get. It could be nothing. It could be me just talking about the history of these places, but I want to see if I could combine my love for the paranormal and my love of history. And now, all these years later, I know the two go hand in hand. When you start investigating the history of, a place, you definitely get a glimpse into the paranormal activity also. So that's kind of like how the New Jersey Paranormal Project was started, and it just kept evolving each year as it went along, to the point now where it's a collaborative. And that's what I wanted. I work with fantastic people, and we share our ideas, our philosophies, and I get to learn so much from working alongside of Ron Yacovetti. He's another author with Beyond the Fray, Lourdes Gonzalez, Kim, the Ghost History Medium, Anthony Simonelli. Like, these are great people in the field that I get to work with regularly. And we get to share our theories, our philosophies, and that's what the New Jersey Paranormal Project really is about. And what I hope that I profile through our like YouTube videos and now the books that I'm writing is just to share these different ideas, the perspectives that these investigators have, and from EVP work to different radio sessions. I mean, just the tactics and the techniques that these people use, it's just great to learn from them. So the New Jersey Paranormal Project, that's what it is. It's a group of people that share a passion for the paranormal and working alongside them.
Yeah, and I think for me, that's what Paraunity is all about, is taking all these different people to do an investigation, because you get all these different perspectives and all these different experiences in life and in the paranormal.
Yeah, and, like there's, you do see clicks where it's like, I'm not going to talk to this person because I don't agree with their, well, I really like to approach everybody with an open mind. I love to hear what you have to say. And if I don't agree with it, it's, totally fine if I don't agree with it. I mean, but that's my belief over your belief. And that's what the whole field is about. It's sharing that. And you could take what you want from this group and take what you want from that group or that individual, and you could be on your way. And that's one thing. I love working with everybody. The one thing that I will not work with are people that abuse it and try to use spirit in a negative way. What I'm talking about with that is when you're trying to push spirit for a conversation that spirit doesn't want to have, or you say you were, brutally attacked and you weren't. I mean, I investigated with a person that literally scratched themselves and said it was spirit. Yeah. And that relationship ended because I don't work with people like that, because then it makes me question the work that you've done with me, and it questions, the years that we had together. So, once you try to portray a place or spirit in a negative light like that, and I know for a fact that the place, didn't have any energy that would have harmed this person. So, and or the places that try to push the scare factor. Oh, it's not about that for me.
Yeah, and part of that, the scare factor, I think, is also, a lot of the TV shows when they go to places like, what just comes to mind is like Penhurst Asylum. For ratings, they're going to dramatize anything that happens, and they're going to trump up anything that happens, but they've been there for a week and only got one EVP. I think that's why a lot of people, places get reputations like that. But like you're saying, also, maybe the owners want it to have that reputation to draw more people in, too.
Yeah.
You never know what people's intentions are.
Yeah, I mean, it's, a business, and these places do want to have groups coming in on a nightly basis, but it's just like the television shows. I mean, it doesn't happen like that. And being in the field, there's plenty of times you're in a dark basement and you walk out with zero evidence.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Sometimes when we're having these open events to the public, they expect our meters to be going nuts the entire night, and how many EVPs are we going to capture? And I always say, if you walk out of any investigation with a handful or even one or two pieces of evidence, it's a productive night. And they compare it a lot to the television shows, and they're like, well, on this episode, and I try to explain to them, sometimes they have multiple nights. Sometimes these groups are there an entire week filming.
Right.
So you have to take that into the consideration when you compare the actual paranormal investigation to a television show.
Yeah, I do a lot of public events that me and my business partners organize, and the first thing I do is when I get up in front of the crowd and I tell them this is not like TV. Mm-hmm. And, if they want me to elaborate, I'll elaborate and tell them, some of the TV shows come in with scripts. I'm like, I'm not trying to burst your bubble about TV, but some of them come in with scripts. And like you were saying, they've been there for 7 days and they catch nothing, and I tell them it's a lot like fishing. You may catch something, you may not. And if we do, then we're lucky that those spirits wanted to interact with us to have those experiences.
No, and I applaud you for that, because there's people out there that don't say that, and these people give the investigators, these people that are coming in from the outside, it's almost like false hope, like, oh, we're going to have a fantastic night and it's going to be off the charts. And when they leave at the end of the night, it's a negative experience because, it wasn't what it was for them. It wasn't advertised as, it wasn't. By giving them that information and by telling them it's not what you see on television, that kind of lets them know that when you do have these interactions and your devices are going off, how powerful that truly is that you're having that communication with spirit.
Right. Yeah, and I just try to convey to them, like, just as long as you leave here understanding that TV is entertainment and you're going to see what we really do tonight. And we might not catch anything or have any activity, but you paid for a ticket, so I'm going to entertain you by telling you stories, of things that have happened to me. But we're going to have a good time, whether we get anything paranormal or not.
Yeah, and that's great. And and that's the number one thing that we can do to the public as investigators, as authors, is educate them. Let them know what the difference is from television and from a producer's narrative to what's actually happening in the field.
Right.
How does energy work? Why does spirit choose to communicate in the way they do? Why do these devices work the way they do? And by doing that, you're educating them. And I feel that if nothing happens that night, at least they leave that investigation with knowledge, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my approach is kind of okay, so I'm gonna when we start investigating, I'm gonna teach you a little bit about the history of the place, so wherever we're at, whatever room we're in or whatever. And then I'm going to explain what equipment that we have and how it works, what the theories are behind it. And then, you're going to get to play with that equipment, but they come away entertained because they've gotten to play with the equipment that they've seen on TV. They actually get to put their hands on it. And I'll explain to them, I'm not a big equipment guy. I think most of it is a crock of shit, but, but I'll explain to them, this is why I feel that way, but I'm also not going to tell you how to think or what your opinion on this should be. I want you to have your own experience with it and make up your own mind about a K2 meter or an SLS camera and things like that. But I'll tell you what I think about them, why I think they don't work.
Right.
What are your thoughts on equipment? Are you a big equipment guy or?
Well, being a medium, I like to use my intuition when I go into a place, and I like to know none of the information when I do go in, because I like to pick up what I'm picking up and not being led by a narrative that a place has.
Yeah.
And a prime example of a narrative that was being told was I investigated a haunted candle shop in the Poconos. And we go in and we have our devices, and the REM pod, is an interesting tool that I like to use with my mediumship, because if I feel something, I'll put that down on the ground. I'll ask the spirit to step forward to it and get interaction. Can you move to the left side? Can you move to the right side? And you're asking an intelligent question and you're receiving an intelligent answer, right? If you're asking something to move and it moves left, it lights up left, it lights up right. But for an SLS camera, when you're mapping a room, if you ever use one, it maps everything.
Right.
So a lot of times when you're in a place and you're mapping, you're getting all these, there's spirits all around us, and probably mapping, probably 90% of the time it's mapping a staircase, it's mapping a chair, but the one thing that I do tell people when you're using that tool is to ask intelligent questions. Well, are you able to move a hand? Are you able to move your right hand? Because if the image on your SLS screen starts moving its hand when you're asking for it, now you connect it intelligently to the spirit that you're communicating supposedly with, right? Because now you're getting that visual response to a question that you're asking. But back to the candle shop in the Poconos, we went in and we're ready to leave. Our investigation happened. We had all those tools that everybody brings, and it was pretty much nothing. Only thing that we had was an interaction with a REM pod. So we're leaving and we're talking to the woman at the counter, and she says that there's a spirit of a little boy from the Fisher family, and the little boy drowned in the back of the candle shop. So once I heard this, I'm like, wow, I really, didn't pick up on a little boy spirit here, but it does happen. Sometimes, you're blocked or you can't pick up stuff. So I talked to the woman more. She was saying, yeah, a medium came in here a few years ago, and she said that a little boy drowned in the back of the creek. So I wrote that down in my pad. I'm like, okay, a Fisher child drowned in creek. So now as I start looking through my evidence, I'm like, I'm going to pay the $20 fee, that it is, and I'm going to do a record check, and I'm going to find out how the Fisher child died. So I, waited a week for the report to come back with the record of the death, and no child drowned in that creek in the Poconos, Eric. The child drowned at Hoboken, New Jersey, which is right across the river from New York City. So now, as I'm writing my, book, and I call the candle shop, I'm like, just so you know, if you're getting any activity that you feel is maybe a child, maybe they're upset that you're telling like a false narrative about how they died. There was no child that drowned in the creek.
Yeah.
So going forward, when you talk about the history of, the place, you could omit that part of history because that child did not drown in the creek. He died of a lung infection in Hoboken. So right then and there, through our paranormal work, we were actually able to change the narrative of a story that's being told to every customer who walks in that door, and they start talking about the paranormal events that are happening in that candle shop. Because I'm sure every time, it's the ghost of the little boy that drowned in the creek. So if we did anything for that investigation, I'm just happy that we were able to actually tell the right story.
Yeah. I had an interesting thing happen not long ago. You ever heard of the Thomas House in Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff up there. We actually got an investigation come up in March, but I was upstairs with a group. We did a public investigation, and I was upstairs with a group, and there's a story, and they don't say this is true. They don't know if it's true or not. But there's a story about a man and a woman getting caught cheating, and the woman's husband caught them and shot the guy, and he fell off the balcony and supposedly died on the front steps. So I'm telling this new group of people who've never been there before this story, and I've got a REM pod next to me, and the REM pod just starts going crazy as I'm starting to tell the story. I get the sense that, okay, it's trying to tell me the story's not true, right? Or I'm telling it wrong. And so I'm like, is it not true? And it stops for a second. And I start to tell the story again, finish the story, and the REM pod goes crazy again. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm guessing I'm going to stop telling this story because it's upsetting you. And then I started interacting with the REM pod with this intelligent response because it would make the REM pod go off, and then I would tell them to back away from it, and the REM pod would stop. And that happened 3 or 4 times. And then we got a few EVPs up there. But yeah, I just got the sense, and so did the group, that because every time I started telling the story, the REM pod would just go crazy. Like they're just tired of the story because it's not true.
And it's probably echoed so much from, the people that go to this location over and over. And it's almost like, when I do these investigations with, the public, I always say, don't lead into an investigation with, how did you die? You start screaming, how did you die? And I always say, why not talk about their lives?
Yeah.
Why not go in there, talk about their achievements that they did, and how many kids did you have, and why did you like this home? And towards the tail end, you could bring in the death question, but just don't start off with, how did you die? Because I think, if anything, it's like that saying, you get more bees with honey, right? So when you go into a place and you have the right intention, that's huge. I feel like intention in this field is huge when you go in with the right intention, and also the way you talk to spirit. Because I've been in places where I heard the investigators come in and demand, you tell me your name, or then start saying, your home is going to get knocked down soon. You better start, talking to it. They don't have to talk to us if they don't want to.
Right.
And they don't have to talk to any group that goes into these places. I think that communion that we have when we walk into a place that has spirit activity is sacred. When we go in there as an investigator, as a medium, that communication between spirit and us is a sacred thing. And when you go in there and you start demanding or talking down to spirit or threatening, that is not the right intention and not the right attitude. And that plays a huge part. So I always say, state your intentions, let them know why you are in that location in case they are confused with who you are and what this equipment is that's being bombarded into their space. Explain it. And first, talk about them. Talk about their lives that were lived, and then you could get into the death question.
Yeah. I always go in with that approach as well. Of somewhere like Thomas House, a lot of people came there because it was a healing mineral springs. They thought they were going to be healed by whatever affliction they had, cancer or whatever. And so one of the questions I ask up there, because there's so many people died there, is, you know, did you live in this house? Because the Cloyd family, who built the place, we've kind of gotten responses from them too. But, you know, we always
Right.
ask, where are you from? We ask about, you know, were you married? Did you have children? How many children did you have? Things like that. Instead of, because also I think, you know, their death was a very small part of their life. You know, if they lived 30, 40 years, they had this big life with all these experiences, and death was just, and maybe sometimes they don't know they're dead.
Yeah. Especially if it was a quick death or,
Yeah.
you know, that's like a whole nother aspect that we could talk about. But yeah, when like you go into these places, I think respect and intention should be at the top of the list. And if you're not bringing it into these places, you should not be investigating the paranormal, because also like attracts like. And I think when you go in with an aggressive, you know, approach, and you're, you know, vibrating, if you will, at that kind of a negative level, you could pretty much attract negative energies. When you come in at a higher place, I feel that, you know, you are going to attract what you put out.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people, I'm like, you know, if you walked into my house and just started yelling at me, you're probably not going to get a good response out of me.
Yeah. You know, somebody barges into your living room while you're watching like a television show with your family and starts, you know, saying, "Tell me your birthday."
Right.
You know,
Right.
You're like, "Get out." So that's, I think the same stuff like pertains to spirit, you know, talk to them the way that you would want to be talked to.
Yeah. One of my other mottos is as well, because people are so stuck on the demonic thing because of the TV shows. But I tell people, if you're an asshole in life, you're probably going to be an asshole in death. Like, why would your demeanor change?
You are 100% right. And, you know, I think a lot of people think like when you do pass away, like you're playing a harp on the other side. But just like you said, like when a bad person passes away, or somebody who's like a wise mind aware, like a wise ass, you're going to be a wise ass on the other side.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in some cases, you know, they hear, you know, demon, and they're like, oh, the whole investigation shifts because they heard, you know, the word demon come through. How do you not know it's spirit messing with you?
Right.
Who's, you know, just knowing by saying that, you're either going to run out of the house or you're going to shake in your boots. So that has to be thought of too. You know, if the person was a trickster in life or a smart ass, you know, they could be a smart ass and a trickster on the other side. They could be a negative person on, you know, the other side if they were negative in life. So a lot of the times, you know, watching the paranormal shows, the questions that come up at these events are, you know, are there any dark entities? Are there demons? Are there, you know, devils? And I always say, like, that's television. Let's talk about real life.
Right. Yeah, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've come across some nasty spirits that weren't very nice. I mean, I've been cussed out and everything like that, but, and I've been physically attacked too. But for the most part, for as far as I know, I've never come across a demon. But like you were talking about before, intention, I think, goes a long way. And I think a lot of things in the paranormal have to do with intention. Even coming down to like, you know, Ouija boards and things like that. You know, when you're a teenager or a kid playing the Ouija board, your intention is to scare yourself and your siblings or whoever you're doing it with. And so whatever comes through is going to scare you. But so when you go into a location, if your intention is to be respectful and nice, I don't think you're going to get those nasty spirits that come across necessarily. Not saying that they don't, because they do, but for the most part, you're going to get that response back.
Yeah, you really get what you put out, you know. And if you go in with, you know, positive energy, if you go in there, you're coming from the highest place that you can, you're only going to attract that. And if something that you feel is vibrating lower than where you're at comes through, you have the, you know, right to walk out and walk away. You do not have to be there. And that's, you know, the thing too. And I always say, like, people with like depression and people that, you know, are going through their own like turmoil, people that are, you know, just down, or they feel like their like energy is, don't investigate if you know, because that's like another aspect too, where if you're going through a depression, you know, you could attract lower vibrations. And that's where sometimes I feel people walk out of places feeling like attachments, and people bringing home something from the investigation. I think it amplifies your own energy, especially if you're negative.
Yeah. Yeah. And you kind of open yourself and let your guard down a bit.
You know, I had a few friends that were going through their own issues in their personal life that have gone on an investigation, and when they come home, they almost feel like whatever was there came back home with them. And, that's a whole aspect of energy and attraction. And, and they found once a few days went by and they meditated and they cleansed themselves, they started to vibrate higher and that negative feeling left. So I think a lot of things in the spirit realm have that energy exchange, positive, negative. So that greatly affects it.
Yeah. With your mediumship, you do something that I never really seen before, but you do spirit art, and you've got a whole section on your website that is really fascinating, where you have some of the pictures that you've drawn of people that you've had come across. I've never seen anybody do that. I've seen people do, like, Cindy Kaza is famous for, like, automatic writing and things like that, but
right.
I've never seen anybody do spirit art.
With spirit art, it's pretty much along almost the same lines as automatic writing. But with spirit art, what you do is you get that mediumship, that clairvoyant picture in your head. I see everything very visually. So I'll see images start going by in my mind's eye when I tune into a place, when I tune into a location or person. I'll see images. And for a loved one, if I'm sitting down with someone, all of a sudden, the person with the most powerful energy kind of steps to the front of the line. I'll get an image of that person in my mind's eye, and I'll start sketching them. And what I try to do is, I'm not a trained artist. I've been teaching myself through books that I picked up at Michael's and online videos on how to draw the face. And what I try to do is capture the essence. And by capturing the essence is the kind of hairstyle they had, their eyes, their nose features, wrinkles in the face. Did they have a skinny face, fatter face? And I try to capture all this. And while I'm doing that, evidential information, because the reading is evidence-based and it's evidence-strong. So the evidential information starts coming through, and I'll ask, are you a man or a woman? How old were you when you passed? And what did you do in life? And I'll see symbols, and I'll see things that they did. And were they a military veteran? Army, Navy, Marines, and for the Navy, I'll see a boat, and I'll do a boat, and I'll write Navy, and I'll see a flag. And then I'll say, is there anything that you want to mention to the sitter that will touch the sitter's heart? And just last night I had a reading, and even going into the reading, I'm like, I kept hearing necklace, got to talk about the necklace. So I sketched the woman's mother, and as soon as I sketched it, I said, Eric, I'm like, I need to bring up the necklace. Can you tell me about the necklace? And she goes, oh my God. And her eyes got really watery. And she goes, when my mother passed, I put the necklace in the coffin with her. So she was buried with it. And I always wondered, does mom know that she has the necklace? And I'm like, wow, it even made the hair on my arms stand up.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that is a powerful message. And I'm like, I just wanted to bring it up because it was very prominent. I need to mention the necklace. And, that's a piece of the evidential information that I say anchors the reading to that person, because it's information I have no way of knowing that attaches itself to the person that I'm doing the reading for. And the necklace meant so much to her, and especially how she put it in the casket. And then I'll get, names, I'll get dates, and all this stuff brings that person back to life for the person sitting across from me. And that is the most heart-filling thing to do, when you could actually connect a person with their loved one, communicating from spirit, and be that conduit between this world and the next. So I've done it through personal readings. I've done it when I went into historical places. That was one of the first places that I went into. I went into this old historical home, and I started seeing pictures in my mind's eye, and I had a piece of paper in front of me, and the woman said, can you tell me what the man looks like? So I drew, the man that I saw him in a double-breasted suit, and he's, holding a pocket watch. And at the end of it, I slid the piece of paper across the desk, and the docent looks at it, and she goes, oh my God. And she runs into the office and starts going through books. And she goes, this is the father of the man who lived in this home. And she shows me his picture, and it's a man in the same position that I drew him, and he's holding the pocket watch.
Wow.
So at that point, I'm like, okay, I need to start working on this. So I started reading into other people that did do this form of mediumship. Rita Berkowitz, Joe Shield, Dawn Pfeiffer, Sue Wood. I mean, there's maybe about 10 or 15 mediums throughout history that actually specialized in spirit art. And you probably wonder why there aren't many more. Well, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy, because not only are you doing a mediumship reading, you're also sketching. You're also writing everything down that's coming through imagery, through symbolism. So it does take a little bit of time, but it's so worth it, because it's totally evidence-based. When you hand this picture over to the sitter or to the location that you're working for, there's no turning back.
Right.
I can't change the face that's on a piece of paper to fit. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just not giving some generic information that they're going to say, oh, yeah, that fits so-and-so. Yeah, you're definitely giving them evidence-based reading that way.
And I come, a school of thinking with this where, my teachers always said, if you see a man that comes through and you see water, you just don't give that information. I see a man, he's by water, so he loved water.
Yeah.
Well, no. Well, why? Well, why did he love water, Eric? Was he a fisherman? Did he serve in the Navy? Did he own a fishing boat? Did he? You have to ask spirit for more detail, and it's through detail, and it's through that specific information that does come through, and those details and that evidence that brings this forth to your sitter and lets them know that, wow, this person's really connecting with my loved one, because it's not general. Oh, a man just loved to sit in his backyard. Of course he did. But do you know what he's drinking? Do you know what he's smoking? And if he is drinking something, is the beer bottle green? Is there a horse on it? Oh, it's Rolling Rock. Like, the specific information like that is really important. So that's always what I try to bring through in my mediumship. Got to keep it evidence-based.
Yeah. I'm very, on the show here, I've been very cautious about any mediums on the show, because I tend to be pretty skeptical of a lot of them. Not that I don't believe that mediumship is a thing, because like I said, I'm an empath, and I very much, a lot of the times, have like I believe it's called clairsentience, where you just kind of know shit that you shouldn't know, especially about living people. My forte tends to be reading living people very well, and whether they're good or bad or that type of thing, I usually know within the first 30 seconds of meeting somebody whether I, should have anything to do with them or not. It's like two magnets repelling each other if there's some reason why I shouldn't be around them. But yeah, I definitely believe in that inherent ability. Do you think that everybody has that ability, and that we can all kind of learn to use it in our own way?
I think we all have an aspect of it. I say to a lot of people, we all have that gut feeling, right? We all say, oh, I have a gut feeling. Well, what is a gut feeling? Intuition. You're having that inner knowing about something, but it's too foo-foo to say, I have an intuitive thought. So what do we say? Oh, I had a gut feeling about that. Well, you're intuitive. We are all intuitive, but it's all about learning how to work with that. And it's like a muscle. You have to develop it. You have to train it. You have to work with it. You have to see how it works, how it doesn't work. And through that, you could see how well you can do with mediumship and with your psychic abilities. I feel that everybody has some level of mediumship or a knowing that they could tap into. But, just like a concert, whether you're a pianist or if you're a guitarist, certain people will be good at doing things than others. But we all have that first level of ability, and it's only through the developing process and going through classes and sittings with other educators and mediums that are out in the field to see if you can hone it and make it better. But to answer it very simple, yes, I do feel everybody does have an intuitive ability, and it's just learning how to work with it.
Yeah, like I said, I'm really good with living people's energy, and I'd really like to kind of hone my own gift into, since I am a paranormal investigator and going out in that field, I'd like to hone it more onto the dead and reading locations and things like that.
Well, there are tons of classes that you can take online, like through the spiritualist churches. Journey Within, it's a church in my state in Jersey, but they offer, a beginner class on mediumship, and it's $10. You can go every week for it, and you sit with other people that are in the same seat that you're in. And you could do it through Zoom, you could do it in person, and it's really what I use to like start. And once you start doing these sessions, you learn how spirit works and also how to work with other people and how messages come across and how symbolism works. And that really opened my eyes. And once I sat through the classes through them, I started looking at other churches that were around that offer mediumship classes and classes on tarot and classes on oracle reading, and to get Reiki certified. I mean, that was another thing this year. I'm like, I want to start putting money into myself, and since I have this mediumship ability, I want to use that as my number one tool. And getting certified in Reiki level 1 was huge. And I feel once I did that, it really opened up my energy more. And I could even see my readings have gotten better within the last 6 to 7 months, just being that I'm Reiki certified now. And again, like we're talking with spirit and energy, I feel that has a lot to do with it. So when you go into these classes, go in with an open mind, you go in with an open heart and soul, and you learn from these teachers, and they're not in it to make tons of money. Like I said, the class was $10, and you learn and you get to have confidence in yourself and in the readings that you're doing for people. And once you're sitting in that reading, Eric, and you start reading for a complete stranger, you start hitting on things in that stranger's life, and they're validating what you're getting. That's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. I've actually had people ask me to try to read them. I always call myself an empath, but, and I have, and I've hit dead on, quite a few times with talking about their lives, not necessarily like their passed on loved ones, but just knowing things about them that I shouldn't know and just kind of blowing them away. And I'm like, that's just, I've always been this way. I don't know how to be any other way.
Yeah. And that's a great gift to have. I mean, that definitely, I feel it runs in families. So, it usually does when you talk about mediumship and strong intuitive knowledge. I do believe that does run in families. So.
Yeah, it's definitely in a line down my mom's side of the family. My, a couple of my aunts they're both passed away, but they were very intuitive, and one of my aunts, my Aunt Pam, who passed away a few years ago from cancer, it could be a cloudless, sunny day out, but if she told you it was going to rain, you better roll your windows up. Yeah. She just had this connection with nature in general that the woman never wore shoes. She always had to be in contact with the earth and grounded, and she was very much like, I would call her like a earth witch, without the connotations of witch, but she just was very good at growing plants and gardening and, that type of stuff. And so, it definitely runs in my family. My mom was a very strong empath. When I was growing up, we had an insane connection that I would come home excited, from school about something, and she would tell me about it before I could even tell her. And there's no way that she would know what happened to me at school that day, and things like that. So, I find it fascinating. And as I get older, I'm kind of getting to where I want to foster it more and learn how to harness it a bit more and control it. I've taught myself over the years of how to guard myself, because it's kind of like I call people like us a lighthouse in the dark, because sometimes you attract dead people, and a lot of times it's while I'm trying to sleep, and I'm like, I'm trying to sleep, like, you have to leave me alone. But I've learned over the years how to kind of guard myself against that and do things to keep myself guarded, so my energy's not drained, and I have a safe space to not deal with all the energy, because sometimes it can be overwhelming too.
Yeah. Well, I had a thing like that. I was on the interstate. I'm coming home from work, and that night I had a reading. So I'm driving, and all of a sudden in my mind's eye, I see an image of a man pop in, and I'm seeing this suction cup doll of Garfield from like the late 80s, 90s, that people would suction cup to their window.
Yeah.
And, and I see the imagery. I know that I have the reading. So in my, mind, I say, this is probably for the reading later. So I said to the man, I'm like, listen, I said, I don't have a pad and pen. The reading is going to be at 9:00 later. I threw it out there. I'm like, please come, because your granddaughter is going to be in the reading. So, we go through the entire reading. As it's happening, I said, I gotta mention the suction cup doll of Garfield. What does that mean to you? She's thinking and she's thinking and she starts laughing. She goes, oh my God. She goes, my grandfather lived in Garfield. That was the town that her grandfather lived in. And it was interesting to me because I grew up in the town that was right next door to Garfield, Lodi, New Jersey. So if I saw Garfield in my mind's eye as the town, I would have just thought that I was thinking about going home.
Right.
But because he brought forth the Garfield suction cup, I was able to bring that up in the reading and know that was coming from Spirit to tell that to his granddaughter. And then that immediately connected with her and her grandfather knowing that he came from Lodi. But that just shows you like how powerful Spirit works and how they work through our consciousness to get a message through to us. And if they went the other route and I just saw a picture of Garfield, the town, I would have never mentioned it.
Right.
But, because he showed me the doll, that came up in the reading, and that was hugely validating.
Yeah. So do you do any kind of protection for yourself going into haunted locations to investigate or even going into a reading?
I have crystals and I have sprays and, I always surround myself with like a white light and I think that's sufficient enough for me. I am Catholic, so, I do have faith and through the crystals, through the protection, that's what's important to me. And just the intention and coming from a good place. I mean, I do know that, I'm not saying there's no demons or devils out there. I know that there's dark, stuff out there, but like always attracts like, and I just try to protect myself the best way possible.
Yeah. And I've always felt like I had spirit guides around me that kind of help protect me. I don't know what you think of spirit guides.
We all do.
Yeah, I feel like I have 4 of them, and they've served me pretty well through life so far.
Yeah, I had a reading, because I haven't gotten into guides yet, but I had a reading from a very good friend of mine. We're sitting down, and she says, I'm going to sketch your guide. And she's sketching, my guide. And I posted this on social media. I even put it in my first book, my New Jersey Paranormal Project. And I, see the image that she's drawing, and it's a Civil War general. And she goes, he looks like Lee. But she's like, I cannot confirm or deny it's Robert E. Lee, but he has a big white beard, and he's wearing like that Civil War outfit. And she goes, yeah, I see, like, it's a general, and he, like, kicks your butt into gear. He's like, big driving force in like your writing, and he like knows how to get you like motivated. And I'm like, wow. But she goes, he's also saying that he's also a huge part of your interest in history, which my entire life, Eric, I have 4 bookshelves that are loaded with books on the Civil War. And since I was a kid, I was always interested in that time period. Over the American Revolution, over World War I or II. I've always loved reading about the Civil War. So once she brought that up to me, I'm like, wow, that could even explain my interests.
Right.
So, it was really cool. So, when I talk to my friends in the field and they're like, well, who's like your spirit guide? I'm like, well, I think he's a Civil War general.
So when you go into a location, do you think, because I've heard lots of different mediums talk about this, and they're of differing opinion. Do you think that spirits are stuck in a location or can be stuck? And do you ever move any spirits on if they want to move on? I don't move any spirit on. I feel like, if spirit wanted to move on, they could. And who's little me coming in at this point in life being like, okay, I'm going to help you move out of here today. I think what we can do as mediums, as investigators, is you come into the place and you can tell them, your family is on the other side, or this house is no longer yours. This house now belongs to this family, and you're welcome to stay as long as you respect them. But you could tell them the facts, and you could leave it up to them. But I really feel that we can't move them on, from my experience. I'm not trying to say, somebody else, if they think that differently. But from my experience, I don't move spirit on. I tell them that, the facts, and I state the history, passed away in a battle, or if you died and your family also is now on the other side, you could join them. But I do not say, walk into the light or anything like that.
So that's, I guess, where I stand with that.
Yeah. Do you think spirits are stuck in a place, or you think they choose to be in that place?
For a spirit being stuck, I don't really feel that spirit could be stuck. I mean, like, I think at some point, someone from their family or from the other side would come and get them or let them know. I think what makes them stay at times is their own persistence of being attached to a place. And I'm going to use the word attached over stuck.
Yeah.
Maybe they might feel, some kind of like a kindred feeling to living in a location or being attached to, an item inside the home or to a point in time. But I'm kind of like hesitant to say stuck. I would probably say more attached. And once maybe you state that their family's now on the other side and that their memory will be remembered, these are things that might help them let go and fully move on to the other side. But, I think attachments in life and attachments to items keep spirit. And we don't even know how time works, right, on the other side.
Right.
So to them, I feel like yesterday.
Yeah.
But 250 years passed. So we don't even know how they think of time. And it's just an interesting concept, like when you really start getting into like the quantum, like physics of it all, and how does time affect, the afterlife, and is there time, and is there a past, is there a future, or is this all just one reality that's so, yeah. So I would say that I think attachment keeps spirit in places.
Yeah. For me, throughout investigating and then also just my own kind of intuition about it, I've always felt like they had a choice. And like you're saying, when they choose to go, they'll go. And they choose to stay because they're fond of a place. They were happiest at this place or, whatever, not necessarily that they're stuck and need anybody's help. But I would never go in with the intention of, unless a family asked me to come in and cleanse a place and, try to move something on. Yeah, I think it's not my place to do that. Like you're saying, it's not your place to do that.
And if somebody out there does that, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just,
right.
I haven't had that experience. So I'm just letting you know on my side, like what I feel. So who knows? Maybe next year I could think differently if I'm shown different evidence. But right now I would say attachment is what keeps them. Yeah,
I agree. I definitely agree. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been great having you on.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And like I said, when we started this, I love your podcast. I love that you handle all different aspects of the paranormal on the show. You do it in such a great way.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Eric.
All right, everybody. They can go check out your books on Amazon Kindle and various other places, your website, and I'll have all those links for people in the show notes. And once again, thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it, brother.
All right, everybody. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. Have a good day. Thank you for listening to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Join us next week for an all-new, amazing guest. And in the meantime, please go on Spotify or Apple and give us a rate and a review. And go over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would like to submit your story, you can email it to unseenparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. And you can remain anonymous if you like. Once again, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.